English story and native language, Puss in Boots. Once upon a time there was a miller who, when he died, had nothing to leave to his 3 sons but his mill, his ass, and his cat. The division was soon made. Neither the notary nor the attorney were sent for, they would soon have eaten up all the poor patrimony. The eldest had the mill, the second the ass, and the youngest nothing but the cat. The youngest was quite downcast at having so poor a share. "My brothers," said he, "may get their living handsomely enough by joining their portions together. But as for me, when I have eaten my cat and made me a muff of his skin, I must die of hunger." The cat, who heard all this without appearing to do so, came up to him and said with a grave and serious air, "Do not thus afflict yourself, my good master. You have only to give me a bag and get a pair of boots made for me, that I may scamper through the dirt and the brambles. And you shall see that you have not so poor a portion in me as you imagine." Though the cat's master did not build great hopes on what he said, yet he had seen him play such cunning tricks to catch rats and mice, such as hanging himself by his heels, or hiding himself in the meal to make believe he was dead, that he did not altogether despair of his helping him in his misery. When the cat had what he asked for, he booted himself very gallantly, and putting his bag about his neck, he took hold of the 2 strings with his 4 paws, and went into a warren where there were a great many rabbits. He put bran and parsley into his bag, and stretching himself out at full length as if he were dead, he waited for some young rabbits, not yet acquainted with the snares and tricks of this world, to come and rummage his bag for what he had put into it. Scarcely had he lain down before his wish was fulfilled. A rash and foolish young rabbit jumped headlong into his bag, and Master Puss immediately drew close the strings, and killed him without mercy. Proud of his prey, he went with it to the palace and asked to speak with the king. He was shown upstairs into the king's apartment, and making a low bow, said to him, "I have brought you, sire, a rabbit from the warren of my lord the Marquis of Carabas, for that was the title which he was pleased to give his master, which he has commanded me to present to your majesty with the assurance of his respect." "Tell your master," said the king, "that I thank him, and that he has given me great pleasure." He presented these to the king. Another time he went and hid himself among some standing corn, holding his bag open as before. And when a brace of partridges ran into it, he drew the strings, and so caught them both. He then went and presented these to the king, as he had previously done with the rabbit which he took in the warren. The king in like manner received the partridges with great pleasure, and ordered his servants to reward him. In this way the cat continued for 2 or 3 months to carry to his majesty from time to time game of his master's taking. One day when he knew that the king was intending to take the air along the riverside with his daughter, who was the most beautiful princess in the world, he went to his master and said, "If you will follow my advice, your fortune is made. You have only to go and bathe in the river, just in the place I shall show you, and leave the rest to me." The Marquis of Carabas did what the cat advised, without knowing what would be the good of doing so. While he was bathing, the king passed by, and the cat began to cry out with all his might, "Help! Help! My lord Marquis of Carabas is drowning." At this noise the king put his head out of the coach window, and, seeing it was the cat who had so often brought him presents of game, commanded his guards to run immediately to the assistance of his lordship the Marquis of Carabas. At this noise the king put his head out of the coach window. While they were drawing the poor Marquis out of the river, the cat came up to the coach and told the king that, while his master was bathing, there had come by some rogues who ran off with his clothes, though he had cried out, "Thieves! Thieves!" several times as loud as he could. The cunning cat had hidden them under a great stone. The king immediately commanded the officers of his wardrobe to run and fetch one of his best suits for the Lord Marquis of Carabas. The king loaded the Marquis with 1,000 attentions, and as the fine clothes he had given him set off his good looks, for he was well made and comely. The king's daughter found him very much to her liking, and the Marquis of Carabas had no sooner cast 2 or 3 respectful and somewhat tender glances in her direction than she fell in love with him to distraction. The king insisted on his getting into the coach and taking the ride with them. The cat, overjoyed at seeing how well his plan was beginning to succeed, ran on before, and coming upon some countrymen who were mowing a meadow, he said to them, "Good people, if you do not tell the king, who will presently pass this way, that the meadow which you are mowing belongs to my Lord Marquis of Carabas, you shall be chopped as small as herbs for the pot." The king did not fail to ask the mowers to whom the meadow they were mowing belonged. "To my Lord Marquis of Carabas," they answered all together, for the cat's threat had frightened them. "You have here a very fine piece of land, my Lord Marquis," said the king. "Yes, sire," replied the Marquis, "this is a meadow which never fails to yield a plentiful harvest every year." The cat, who still went on before, met some reapers, and said to them, "Good people, if you do not say to the king, who will presently pass this way, that all this corn belongs to the Marquis of Carabas, you shall be chopped as small as herbs for the pot." The king, who passed by a moment after, wished to know to whom all that corn before him belonged. "To my Lord Marquis of Carabas," replied the reapers, and the king was again very well pleased with the Marquis. The cat continued to go before the carriage and say the same words to everyone he met, and the king was astonished at the vast estates of my Lord Marquis of Carabas. The cat came at last to a stately castle, the master of which was an ogre, the richest ever known, for all the lands the king had been passing through belonged to this castle. The cat, who had taken care to inform himself who this ogre was, and what he could do, asked to speak with him, saying he could not pass so near his castle without having the honor of paying his respects to him. The ogre received him as civilly as an ogre could, and made him sit down. "I have been assured," said the cat, "that you have the gift of being able to change yourself into all sorts of animals. If you have a mind to, that you can, for example, transform yourself into a lion or an elephant." The ogre received him as civilly as an ogre could, and made him sit down. "That is true," answered the ogre roughly, "and to convince you, you shall see me now become a lion." The cat was so terrified at the sight of a lion so near him that he sprang away, and climbed up on the roof, but not without much difficulty and danger, as his boots were of no use at all for walking upon tiles. A little while after, when he saw that the ogre had quitted the form of a lion, he came down, and owned that he had been a good deal frightened. "I have been further informed, but I know not how to believe it," said the cat, "that you have also the power of taking the form of the smallest animals. For example, but you can change yourself into a rat or a mouse, but I must own that I hold this to be impossible." "Impossible," cried the ogre, "you shall see." And at the same instant he changed himself into a mouse and began to run about the floor. The moment the cat saw the ogre in this form, he sprang upon him and ate him up. Meanwhile the king, who saw, as he passed, this fine castle of the ogres, had a mind to go into it. Master Puss, hearing the noise of His Majesty's coach crossing the drawbridge, ran out, and said to the king, "Your Majesty is welcome to the castle of my Lord Marquis of Carabas." "What? My Lord Marquis," cried the king. "And is this castle yours also? There can be nothing finer than this court, and all the stately buildings that surround it. Let us see the interior, if you please." The Marquis gave his hand to the young princess, and followed the king, who went before. They entered a spacious hall, where they found a splendid collation which the ogre had prepared for some friends who were to visit him that very day, but who dared not enter, hearing that the king was there. The king was so charmed with the good qualities of my lord the Marquis of Carabas, and his daughter had fallen so violently in love with him, that, seeing the vast estate he possessed, he said to him at the end of the collation, "It depends only on you, my lord Marquis, if you are not my son-in-law." The Marquis, with low bows, accepted the honor which His Majesty conferred upon him, and forthwith that very same day married the princess. Puss in Boots became a great lord, and never ran after mice any more except for his amusement.